and welcome to the webinar today. So we'll start off, and Hans can introduce himself in a second and what we're going to focus on today. But yeah, welcome to the broadcast. We're happy to have you all here. So over to you, Hans.
All right, we can move to the next slide then. Hello, everybody. Indeed, also from my side, welcome to the webinar. I'm Hans Koch. I'm country manager at Biztory Belgium. And at Biztory, we activate data. So we help companies by activating their data. And today that will be activating data through AI. We also have Matthew here. Matt, up to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Matthew Litterfield, and I am the field CTO for analytics here at Salesforce. I cover everything analytics that we have at Salesforce, but been here for about 9 years. So looking at how we really activate our data and how we move through testing out ideas right through to production side of things. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail in just a moment. But let's begin by setting the scene a little bit. So within the technology world, technology is always creeping forward ever so slowly, day by day. So we're continually having improvements. But every now and again, we have a big breakthrough and something changes. And then we have a big leap forward in that technology. And when we think about some of the things and the leap forwards that we've had in technology over the last 20, 30 years, you think about things like the internet or the mobile experience. Certainly when I started my career, it was in the mobile space and everybody wanted mobile. Nobody necessarily knew how we could get applications and engage customers and partners and employees on mobile, but everybody knew that they wanted it. And you can imagine that we're going through a bit of a wave like this at the moment, but we do have large waves that are happening. And as I said, we're kind of in the middle of one of these waves at the moment. So when these waves happen, we have a bit of a ground shift. And the ground shift happens and the technology becomes real, and we can actually start thinking about how we use it and go and make it available to our businesses and how we actually gain value from it when we're living in our day-to-day in our life and work. And in terms of AI, the AI wave that's coming at the moment, it holds a lot of promise for us. There's a lot of promise in that it seems like it's magic and it can do a lot more and has a lot more capabilities than anything that we might have seen before. But the challenge lies in where we actually deliver that promise. So how far can it go and how can we actually bring the promise of AI to life within our organizations for the benefit of those organizations? So one of the key things is actually how do we actually focus in on the value that it can provide us when we are living and working, engaging with our customers and partners and anybody else in there as well. So really the focus of today is about how we go from that idea right through to the application of the technology itself to really start getting on it. So we are focusing on the big wave that's happening at the moment that I'm sure everybody is feeling. But AI is already changing. And one of the challenges in the fact that AI is changing the way we live and work is that our expectations start to get higher and higher, because in our day-to-day as consumers and the way we just live our lives, we're starting to make use of AI to help support us. It's a slightly different focus when we're thinking about it at an enterprise level, but actually for us, the change is there. And actually one of the things that it's doing for me personally, one of my roles as field CTO is actually to be really close to the solution advancements that we have. And as you can imagine, it's quite a broad platform. So there's lots of changes. We're having monthly releases at the moment for the analytic solutions that we have. So how do I keep on top of everything that's coming so that I can give the best, most relevant messaging to the customers and the sales teams that I work with? And AI is helping me with that. It's taking this huge amount of information that I need to go through and understand and get value from, and consolidating that into a few minutes for me to understand the key points, etc., and know where I need to go to actually double click. So it's taking something that would have taken me, a few hours every single week to keep on top of, down to minutes. So this means that everybody else's expectations is when we're working, how do we actually use that to change the way we work and bring those tasks down to minutes rather than hours? But we are getting to the end of the hype cycle. So people are starting to realize actually there's nuance to the way AI works, and how do we actually apply that to the business and the way we work. And that's one of the key things that we need to start focusing in on, is actually that end goal and the value that we can start to gain from AI. But we need to be clear as well. AI is just going to supercharge how we work. It's going to take the processes and the ways that we work today and streamline those so that we can focus on the higher value tasks, or reduce some of the manual work that we're doing and gain more insights and have more view of all of the data and information that we can get. So actually, one of the things that we need to think about as organizations is, how does it specifically drive our business value, rather than wouldn't it be cool to have this piece of technology to do X, Y, and Z? But what is it really going to do with us? How is it going to supercharge our work? And it's not a case that we can just go and take that AI and deploy it and put it into the business and let everybody go crazy. We do need to actually have the governance, the control, the right data to make that valuable. Because if we don't think about these steps beforehand, it's not necessarily going to supercharge things for us. And like I said before, AI does seem magic. So the expectations from the business, from us as people, is that it's going to just do everything for us. It's going to give us those answers. It's going to take that task. It's going to go and do things on its own. That may or may not necessarily come to fruition, but whatever it ends up being for us as an organization, we do need it to focus on the company goals and what's going to help drive us and move us forward. But there's also a big gap at the moment. So there's a big gap between everybody wanting to use and implement AI, and actually, how do we go about doing that? How do we take this and operationalize this? It's really easy, and the access is really low in terms of the barrier to entry to start using AI. We can go straight to any of the LLM vendors and actually start using it and testing it and putting things in there. But then you've got to start thinking about, how do we do that at scale? How do we truly operationalize that? How do we have this? Do we have the skills to maintain that within our organization and continue this evolution that is going to be needed when we actually start using AI within the organization? And you can see from the stats here that the majority of businesses are looking at AI at the moment. Certainly this week, 3 or 4 of the customers I've spoken to this week have actually said we need to have AI because that's now mandated at the board level. We want to see where we can gain the efficiencies and the creativity that AI can provide us. But they have also, in the same conversation, said to me, how do we actually go about doing that? Like, what do we actually need to be thinking about once we have gotten over a proof of concept or a pilot, and how do we actually deploy that within the organization for the longevity of the solution that's going to support the business here? And when we think about proof of concepts, actually, most proof of concepts are really good ideas, but a lot of them fail because the transition from that idea and that testing phase to how do we actually apply that into the business, that's where the challenge starts to come in, is how do we actually bridge that gap between the two areas that we're thinking about there. So when we're thinking about the difference between proof of concept and BAU, business as usual, in terms of the production side of things, we're really good at the POC side. We're really good because we have lots of ideas. And like I say, a lot of these POCs do fail for various reasons. It could be technology or adoption or what have you. But actually, we're very good at kind of testing things out. Really good at laying out what we think the ROI is going to be here for the business. We're really good at testing it. We're really good at actually validating it as an idea. But the muscles we need as an organization to actually move things into production are slightly different. We need to think about things more at a strategic level. Okay, the technology may work and solve the challenge we believe that it's going to be solving for us to realize whatever business benefit that we might have here. But actually, we need to start thinking about, okay, well, how do we continually maintain this? How do we support the business through this change of the way that they're working? And how do we actually apply all of the things that we need to apply to actually continue the success for this as the business? And when it comes to AI, I think one of the specific challenges that we might see more over than any of the other technological waves that we've had in the past is actually, how do we prepare for catastrophic success? And what I mean by that is, if we run a POC and everybody in the business loves it and it's providing huge amounts of value, what if we then turn that on and actually it's so successful in the business, it puts pressure on how we maintain it, how we deploy it, how we govern it, how we set the data up, etc. And that can cause issues in its own right. So actually, preparing for catastrophic success is one of the things that is really important for us to do. I once led a huge project within the Salesforce organization a few years ago. One of my mentors said this to me: this is going great, you're in pilot stage, everybody's using it and excited and see the value, but have you prepared for catastrophic success? And I was like, I don't think I have. If we turn this on and everybody loves it and the adoption's super high, then we're going to be in real trouble, because we don't necessarily have the operationalization in the background to support the business using this. So this is the gap, is how do we actually think about things once we've been successful. Planning for that success and preparing for it to be wildly successful is something that's really key for this move between POC and production. So we need to think about things in a strategy. We need to actually have a strategic approach to the way we're going to be delivering these things to the organization. An AI strategy isn't a set of use cases. This isn't a case of, okay, we'll go turn all this stuff on. I'll turn these things on, I'll turn those things on, and everybody can go and start using it. This is where we might start to introduce catastrophic success, because people will start using it and they will enjoy it and love it, and it will provide them huge amounts of value. But actually, these use cases might not necessarily tie together to provide that business value. So what you need to start thinking about really is that intentional plan for business as usual. And I'll give you a really good example here. In the analytics space, something we're seeing more and more is the importance of something like the semantic model. The semantic model is our business layer that gives us context here, but a lot of organizations are like, oh, I've set up the semantic model, that's a tick on the use case, and now we can just roll it out. But actually, I think the semantic model is going to be a living and breathing entity that we're going to have to manage and maintain. We think about, what if we merge organizations? What if we open a new revenue stream and a new business? All the semantics are going to continuously change. So that continuous re-looking at what it is, how it's delivering things to the business, is going to be really important for us to maintain. And that's not necessarily a use case, that is a strategy and approach that we need to be thinking about this. And the heart of any strategy is actually the experience that we can provide to the business, in the way that the business and the employees and our teams work and engage with their customers and engage with their partners as well. So really, an AI strategy is a roadmap for that activation. And when you start to think about things in terms of a term roadmap rather than AI activation, rather than use cases, so a roadmap for AI activation can start focusing down on the people and the process, and how do they work today, and how can we move them from the way they're working today to the way that they might work tomorrow, and where's the real value that's going to be derived in that. Some of the best POCs that I've seen in my time working have failed because actually people didn't adopt them at the end, because the roadmap didn't account for the people and the process and the way that people are working today. So if we're having that focus on the business impact, and we're also focusing on the way people are working, that's when we can start to really define what that roadmap looks like, and how we can really activate AI within the business. So let's take a little bit more of a detailed look at what this could look like. Now, points 1 and 2 here sort of fall a little bit into the POC stage in my mind. We create those ideas, we understand what they might do and how they might actually affect the business in terms of the business outcomes we're trying to achieve here. And then actually we start to understand whether they're feasible at all. And that feasibility and that impact often focuses on the technology, and can we actually tie together all of our bits and pieces of our tech? How do we actually use that in practice? How does the people use that? So what's the impact of the change, etc.? Really important steps for those first steps. The middle step is actually probably one of the most important steps in my mind as well, because this is where we're actually thinking about the workflows, the processes, the way people are actually working. And particularly within the analytics space, we start thinking about the experience that we can deliver to the business through those business insights that we can provide to them. And I think actually, if we design this well, some parts of the business might not even realize they're kind of using analytics. Those insights are brought to them at the point they need them, they can go and action them, etc., etc. So that design there is really important for the following steps, and understanding the experience that we want to give the business, the way they're working today and way they might work in the future. And if we get that right, that's when we can start thinking about building that trust and that adoption and deploying that out to the wider organization. So things like having those champions within the business that are going to be talking to the rest of the organization within their teams, and really understand and be those kind of, front runners in terms of adopting and using their technology. This is where it starts to get more groundswell, and people realize and understand the value that they're getting from the technology. And then you move into that kind of activation phase towards the end here. So all of these are logical steps, but the view on the the business outcomes and what we're trying to achieve being set at the front and constantly being checked throughout the process, and that understanding of the experience, the way people are going to be working, for me, are some of the keys to success here when we're moving from an idea through to the application of that idea. So we've heard a lot here in terms of the setting the ground, but now I guess we're all thinking, how do we actually put this into practice? So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Hans, where he's going to take us into a bit more detail about how do we look at the design of this, the use cases, etc., and how do we actually put this into practice. So over to you, Hans.
Let me share my screen and set everything correct here. There we go. So indeed, as Matthew said, I think you saw it also at the beginning or former slide, the overview. Let's go to it. The use case. This is one of the most important stages of the whole AI process, actually, and it's very important to find a proper use case that brings value to your company, and that might sound very trivial, but what you very often notice is that this step is completely skipped, and that is a big problem, because obviously afterwards you go into proof of concept, investments have been done, and the case at the end seems, or the business case seems non-existent, or the return on investment is too low, and that is a shame, obviously, because it's a huge waste of resource. So it's very important to, at the beginning already, identify a proper and manageable use case. And at Biztory, you can ask yourself, how do we do that? At Biztory, we have quite a simple technique for that, and it all starts with a sailing boat. So we usually use just a whiteboard or a lucid spark. And in the middle of it, we find our inner artist, and we draw a sailing boat and the waterline. And everything on top of the waterline is actually what pushes your company forward. It's what's going well. This is the tailwinds. Everything below the waterline it's your anchors, it's your friction, it's your currents. This is pushing against you. This is working against you. This is slowing you down. The bad things, the challenges. Now, if you start with AI, what we do usually is we focus on what is below the waterline. Obviously, what is going well, you might even improve it even more. But definitely at the beginning, we're looking for huge impact. So we're going to look for cases that don't go so well yet, your anchors, your challenges. How can we push them to something that is moving you forward in the company? So those are the cases we're focusing on. We have a lot of ideas or challenges that we put on the whiteboard or the Lucid Spark, and then we group them. And after a while, you have then a few business cases, a few challenges grouped together, and these usually we take only 1 or 3 maximum. We put them on the ideation wheel. That's the next step. Ideation wheel looks a bit like this. Here we have the challenge in the middle, and around that we have 4 categories. It could have been 2, it could have been 3, 4, 5. Why do we split this up in categories? Well, usually a challenge isn't just isolated to one event. So usually there's different reasons why you have a certain challenge, and these different reasons, we put them in categories. So every category is a different reason. And once you have the different categories, then you can start to play with how are we going to solve these problems, these parts of the problem, these categories. And those we call the how might we's, the HMWs, the how might we's. Let's keep it by that. So those are the solutions, the possible solutions that we also group together. Maybe to make this all a bit more tangible, let's say that you have a company that is selling building materials, and one of the challenges is that there is too many incoming requests that are left unanswered. So potentially you're losing business. That is a challenge. That challenge can be cut up in different categories, and maybe one of the categories might be that the sales doesn't know on which request to focus first. So there's no way of prioritizing, which is a problem. That might be a category. And then in that category, we might have, for example, two how might we's, one about, how can we solve this? Maybe just make sure that all of the incoming requests that they are connected or collected in the CRM system and that they are connected to, if it is an existing customer, the account manager of that customer, or if it is a new customer, to an account manager that is working on the specific vertical that this new customer is also coming from. And that is something, definitely the second part, something that you could be solving in AI or through AI, let's put it that way. A second how might we might be, for example, we might want to create a prioritization list or prioritization in the CRM system of all of those requests, those incoming requests. Focus on the biggest potential first. Make sure that the sales know where to start. All of these, or those two, both can be solved with some AI in place. And that's the process. That's how you do it. That's how you get to a few interesting, how might we, a few interesting business cases. Now, you have your ideas on that wheel, on that ideation wheel. Now it's time to check also feasibility and also impact to set the priorities of your business cases straight. And before we dive into the next step, I think it's important that we're aligned on the different stages of AI adoption, because that will come back afterwards. So a first live AI use case is a milestone. That is really one of the most important and huge steps actually in the right direction. But as you begin with your AI journey, it's very important to understand that that first use case is not your final destination. It's AI is not static. It's not a static tool. Its role in the company will evolve. It will mature over time. And we see this evolution happening in three specific stages. The first stage is the efficiency stage. So that's the stage where we advise most companies to start. It's it's actually where you really should start if you're starting with AI. So at this stage, AI is driving efficiency above all. It's looking at quick wins. It's looking at streamlining repetitive tasks, and the goal is really saving time and costs. And it's actually doing what you did before, but apologies, faster and cheaper. So stage two, it's an enhanced process. It is you're moving forward into time, and your maturity grows. And at that point, stage two, AI isn't just increasing your process speed; it's also making it better. So at this stage, AI is actually acting as a high quality accelerator, and you're not just saving time, you're also improving the quality of the output and the decision-making process itself. And then stage three, that's the transformational stage, that the transformed process. That is one of the most powerful stages. And there, AI is not just enhancing the process, it's really driving it. So you're moving where you were in stage one and stage two into a human-led process, existing processes that are augmented by AI. In stage three, you're actually moving towards an AI-led process that is augmented, followed up by a human in the loop, overseen. That's also another word. So successful organizations, and that's important to know, they usually don't jump to, or usually, I've never seen one, jump to stage three. They start with stage one, they build a foundation, and from there on, they naturally progress up the curve towards that North Star, the fully transformed business. So the first thing you want to do if you have all of your how might we's, your business cases, is you want to know where they sit in these stages. Is it a stage one? Is it a stage three? Let's identify that. And that is quite important because moving up the curve obviously requires higher levels of maturity. The higher the complexity and levels of autonomy, the more important your underlying data and the complete AI infrastructure.
Can
Matt,
I
you had something? Yeah. Yep.
No, I was going to interject here as well. So just to bring together a few themes, there's an organization that I'm working with at the moment, and they essentially work with restaurants in different areas. And as you can imagine, there are bigger restaurants and bigger chains of restaurants, and there's smaller restaurants that might be sort of family-owned restaurants and that sort of thing. So they have account managers that will look after an entire patch for maybe a city or a region, and there's a long chain of these smaller restaurants that they would like to serve and help and work with. So the how might we question for this particular organization was actually, how do we serve the smaller customers where we might not have as much time or revenue generated from these organizations in a way that's treats them like our larger customers, but also gives that time for the salespeople. And of course, how might we do that? Might be just to hire an army of salespeople and account managers to go and work with them. But obviously that comes with their, benefit downfalls for the business in terms of cost and everything else. So for this particular organization, they have said, right, okay, well, first of all, we want to start looking at the autonomous agents here. We want to look at AI assistants, autonomous agents, and actually have these business development autonomous agents that can go and support the smaller customers in this long tail of smaller restaurants that they're working with. But actually, they're also thinking about AI assistance in terms of how do we have AI to support the data acquisition or the data side of things for the account managers as well. To bring those data when this particular chain, that's a smaller one that the account manager might not have seen before, is likely to churn and leave us as a customer, alert that person. They're thinking about level 4, about bringing those two things together, to have the AI that's looking at the data and the levels of churn or the predictions of churn and things there, and tying it together with those autonomous agents there as well. And to tie back to some of the things we were saying earlier, they kind of started with this in mind. They knew that this was the end goal that they were trying to get to, but they knew that how might we is going to step up in levels of complexity, etc., that Hans has been talking about already. But a real world example of an organization starting with that end in mind, thinking about the business value, but actually taking those leaps as moving forward in terms of maturity and complexity there. So I thought I'd just bring that because I felt like it brings it a little bit to life there.
Yeah, super. Thanks a lot. Then, so we've seen the different stages, the 3 stages. To help you prioritize on which how might we to work, we plot or how might we, or let's call them business cases on this matrix. And this matrix is, if you look at the axis, you have one axis with adoption. That's how easily can the business use case be integrated into your business. And secondly, you have AI maturity. How advanced is the technology and the organizational readiness that you need for this business case? And you will see here in this matrix, it's actually you will see the 3 stages. You have efficiencies to first start with. That's the low adoption, low maturity at the left bottom. And these are your quick wins. It's, as discussed, this is where we advise you to start if you start with AI in general. Then if you move to the right, you have high adoption, low maturity. That's really increasing the speed and the output quality of your workflows. That is actually making sure that AI is already taking over a few standard tasks from your people and freeing up actually the human talent for some higher value work. And if you afterwards then move more up, that's once again that level 3, that North Star. That's the transformations, high adoption, high maturity. That's really, that's augmenting and fundamentally transforming your processes with AI, where we all want to work towards. Obviously, that's the goal. There's a 4th one here also, and I didn't show that on the 3 stages that we discussed earlier, because it's one that you should be focusing on actually. It's the distractions. So these are, and you see them. We've noticed them with a few of the companies we work with also. Those are high complexity use cases that offer little to no business value, but still pop up sometimes. And yeah, if you really have too much money or time on your hands, then definitely go focus on these. But we are advising against that. This is where your projects go to die. This is the things that stay in proof of concept indefinitely. This is not what you want to do. This is a loss of resource, to be quite fair. So we have plotted everything, or everything, at least the interesting business cases, those that bring value. We know now where they sit. We also know a bit the maturity of our organization, so where we need to focus on. So now we need to take into account actually AI maturity of, well, no, we did that taking into account the AI maturity of our business, obviously also. Now, what is next? And next is keeping in mind that the agent is just a part of your solution. I'm saying agent here. It could be AI workflow, anything AI related, to be quite fair. But you really need to keep that in mind. You need to avoid the risk of being trapped in the proof of concept stage by looking at AI, by stopping actually at looking at AI as a standalone tool. There's a whole world of data and processes behind it that need to be tackled too. So most organizations, they fail to move an agent to production because they focus on the agent. And the agent is a nice goal. It's actually a really good goal. But in the end, it's just a shiny front end, the shiny interface. And you need to look at the rest also, at the complete architecture. And you have two blocks there. You have the middle block, data. Data is one of the most important drivers. Unlike, for example, a ChatGPT or a Gemini, your agent, your AI workflow will probably not get their data straight from the net, and I don't think it should. So you should upfront have a discussion on which data are we going to feed to the LLMs, and also how are these LLMs going to understand the data that we're feeding them. A bit more on that in one of the next slides also. And secondly, also, AI cannot live in a bubble. So your agent or your AI solution needs to be embedded into the app workflow and the apps or the workflows in the way of working of your teams. And those teams, yeah, they can range from budget, forecasting, operations planning, sales, doesn't matter. But the AI solution needs to live in their flow of work. Otherwise, it's not going to be used. So when you focus on that entire ecosystem rather than just the shiny chatbot, you will solve the fragmentation and adoption issues that kill most pilots or keep business cases into pilot indefinitely. And this is a bit of an overview. This is what the whole environment will look like or might look like. Let me go a bit deeper into that one. When I talk about that you need to focus on data, we're not just talking about any data, we're talking about AI-ready data. If you dive a bit deeper into this overview, at the left side, you see the ingestion layer. Ingestion layer, that's every single data source you have in your company. That goes from modern cloud data warehouses to legacy systems. You'll have a lot if you have a company or if you're working at a company, and there will be a lot of silos too. So what you need to do first is you need to create an AI-ready data layer, the AI-ready data foundation. That's the bottom of the middle part. There you're really looking at, okay, which data are we going to use to feed to our LLMs? Definitely don't start with feeding them with everything. That's not going to be necessary. That's going to be inefficient, plus also very hard to follow up. So you start with a part of the data that you're going to feed to it to make sure that it can do its work. And when we're talking about AI-ready data, it's not just having tables and schemas. It's really about ensuring that every single piece of data in there has some critical qualities, and these qualities I list them below also. Those are models and documentations, first of all. So the system knows what it's looking at. Metrics and lineage, and that's to ensure consistency and to trace the history of your data also. And then freshness and ownership. Freshness, you obviously don't want your agent or your LLM to work on out-of-date data and start hallucinating because of that. And secondly, also you need ownership. You need somebody who is accountable. Otherwise, your project and also the data part will not will not work. It will fail. On top of that middle block, you have the LLMs, the large language models, the typical ones, you know them, OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini. There's many more. And what they do actually, they get their information from the right side, which is your agent, your AI workflow. They trigger the LLMs. The LLMs go look for data in the AI-ready data, and they push an answer back to the between brackets front end, the agent or the AI workflow. And then there's a very important one in between there. So between the LLMs and the AI-ready data, you have the semantic layer. And that semantic layer really makes sure that the LLMs understand what's going on in that AI-ready data, in that data foundation. Let's say, for example, that you have a data column in your AI-ready data that says or that is called SOC24-SF. Maybe 3 of your data engineers in the company know that that means revenue, but your LLM will never understand that. So it will start hallucinating if your agent then, or if somebody through the agent will ask about the revenue. And so that's why that semantic layer is really, really important. I think there's, so the right side, indeed, that's all of the agents. You have all of the AI solutions. You have agentic analytics, you have ML AI workloads, AI agents, and generative AI. And to make it all a bit more tangible, the middle part is the brain. It's the brain of your body. It's where all the thinking goes on. That's the real brain power of the whole infrastructure. And the right side is the body. And the body has eyes, ears, and a lot of other senses. And it pushes through these senses, it pushes information towards the brain. The brain processes this based on the data or the information it can get its hands on. And then it pushes actions based on that information back to the body. And the body does what it needs to do. Triggered by the brain, it starts to move, it starts to speak, it brings an output. That output is an output that is brought obviously by our AI workflows or your agents. Now, it's very important to know that if you don't work on the brain, if you don't teach the brain, if you don't put enough effort and thought in the brain, then the only output that the body will produce is bad crap. And that's something you really need to avoid. Hence, once again, if you're looking at AI agents, don't only look at your agent, the body, definitely invest a fair amount of time in the brain also.
And just to share something on this as well, because I totally agree here. And you mentioned about the data side, and the data side is super important, because if we don't clean and get that data AI ready, and we've got hundreds of columns in there, like Hans described, the AI has that available to make use of it. And if we then don't tell the LLM what those columns are and mean and actually have value for us in terms of the way it's engaging with us in the way we work on the semantic layer, then it's also not going to have value for us as well. There was a customer I worked with in January, and the guy I was speaking to was actually a data scientist. He has an astrophysics PhD. You know, he understood data. He really knew what he was doing. And he said, oh, I've put all my data into a chat GPT, and actually it's come back with some results. And on first glance, he said the results looked really good, but he's in healthcare, though it's a healthcare organization. And he said, but it was telling me that we were doing some drug trials that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And I got scared, because I was like, well, why is this happening? And he dug down into it, and what he found is actually some of the drug trials there, it was blending real names of real employees and real locations and real things with hallucinated ones, because it didn't know what the business terms were. It didn't understand some of the data that it was being given in terms of the columns and things there. So it made it up. It made it up and gave him a plausible answer. Now, thankfully, he had the experience and expertise to dig down and understand what that is. But imagine if we weren't that sort of person within the business. That's where it becomes really important for us. So we talk about AI being magic and we can throw it, and it does look like it does a lot of good things for us and it can provide huge amounts of value, but it has to be grounded in our business. We have to have that governance, that control, and those guardrails to ensure that the people that are getting those insights or engaging with the LLM trust it and know that it's been validated and understood. Otherwise, we get in the situation where it's kind of blending reality with fiction, and then we start to get into real problems when we're making decisions or using it and relying on it there as well. So super important layers for us to build up when we're thinking about the productionization of AI.
Thanks for that, Matt. And as Matt also said, and as I showed this might sound all like a lot of work, but obviously you don't start with the most complex AI use case from the beginning. Something we would also always advise against too. Also, if you go further on the process, you can reuse things if you approach it correctly. So as you move from one successful use case, very important, the first one, to 10 or to 100, the biggest threat to your AI initiative isn't going to be your technology. It's going to be complexity. And we see that already happening with companies who are doing a lot of AI projects with different tools, and it starts to become complex quite fast. So if you build rigid monolithic AI systems, then they will eventually crumble under their own weight. And so the fundamental principle here is that loosely coupled components scale better. If you need to, for example, upgrade your ingestion engine because there's a new one or a better one, then you can do that without pulling down your API gateway if you build from the beginning your solutions in a bit of a, your AI solutions in a bit of a modular way. And a modular design isn't just a technical preference. It's actually the only way to ensure that your AI strategy is going to remain agile enough. So a very important one to take with you. Deployment and trust.
So to explain a little bit more of this one here, so we've talked a lot about the approach and things, but in terms of an architecture, if we start to build everything on those, agile modular components down at the shared AI services side of things, we can then start to build up the foundations there. And the foundations are there to help us combat some of the challenges we know with AI, but also there for us to really deliver the business value to the organization as well. So the cornerstone, the very foundation of it all, is actually that security and governance. Let's ensure that when I'm engaging with the LLM, that I can see the data and things that I need to see and not the things that I don't need to see in there. One, confusion, experience, etc. for the business, but also there are things within organizations that we don't want the teams to be seeing or understanding in terms of what is going on. They need the view that they need to help them do their work and their job and their experience better. And then from this, once we have that sort of thing in place, we start to build out that data. Now, in terms of data, how do we organize that? How do we orchestrate all of that and bring that together so that we can use that in the activation there? So really, up until this point, we're talking about how do we build out the data foundations and have the systems of record in a way that makes the data and the security and the governance and the enterprise level techniques that we need to deploy all of this ready for AI to then start going to use for us. We talked a little bit about the experience as well. So from here, it's about understanding what the experience is, the different use cases and the way that people are going to be using that AI. I often talk to people about the changing way that analytics is moving in the direction we're going. We used to just deliver the dashboards as a product, and now we're delivering things as an experience. So when I wake up as a salesperson, what's the first things that I need to do? Can I infuse any of those things with business insights to help me do those things better? For example, what do I do when I first engage a new customer? What do I do when I engage an existing customer? All of these things are a different experience and workflow I need to go through. Each one of those points is going to have use cases where we can infuse AI into the experience to enhance that person's job and day, etc. And that is where we start moving into that activation side of things. So all of the activation layers is really the business case. This is the value that we are getting from those different moments where we're injecting AI into the workflow and the experience of those person's days. And as we start to think things like that and bring it all together, this is where we start to have this productionized AI for the business to bring it forward. So, you know, coming full circle, we were talking earlier about starting at the outside of this circle, what's the business value, and working our way in from production. Then we go the other way to like bring it all together and make it valuable for the organization. So a little bit on how we approach things.
Cool. Then adoption and activation. As we look towards scaling, we have to be honest. There are many AI projects that fail because, yeah, before they ever reach production, and even with the best technology, there are a few traps, few red flags, that can derail your momentum. If you spot any of these red flags, I'm going to show you 4 in the proof of concept stage. It is time to pause and to realign. So 4 of those red flags are the 4 that we see quite often. First of all, no clear success or return on investment criteria. This is just a lack of measurable value. If you cannot define exactly what success looks like, or how it will impact the bottom line, then your project will remain most probably a science experiment rather than a business asset. And that's something you don't want. Also, lack of strategic alignment. I think that goes for both AI projects or any other project. If your project doesn't align with your overall business strategy or your core goals, yeah, it will struggle to find long-term support from leadership. I think that's normal. A very important one also is the lack of a plan beyond the proof of concept. We see that very often, and that's, I think, the most common cause of the proof of concept purgatory. So many teams, definitely the ones that focus on their first AI business cases, they focus so hard on making that pilot work that they forget or fail to build a roadmap for what happens next. So you need quite fast a plan for scaling, for maintenance, and ownership to make sure that things move into production and also are efficient and bring return on investment to your company. And then lastly, you also see a red flag when a project is tech-led, 100% tech-led instead of business-led. You need to remember that AI activation is a business transformation. So it's not just an IT ticket. When a project is purely tech-led, it will solve technical solutions, or quite often will solve technical solutions that are not really a problem for the business, or the business doesn't care. And yeah, that's then it's not going to be used in the end, obviously. So the business must lead the why. IT should be enabling the how. And then you are actually halfway if you cover those red flags, because next to the technical readiness, you also need organizational readiness. And there's 5 pillars here, which I will quickly go through. First of all, owner. I think we mentioned it before also. Every initiative, also AI initiatives, need an owner who is ultimately responsible for this project. If there's no accountability, and we've seen it also before, then once again, POC, purgatory for sure. Data. You need to catch upfront unfair or biased outputs. That needs to be done before it goes to the LLM also. So You need some process, and can be a human in the loop. It can be an automated validation process that checks if the data is correct. Lineage also, um, people that don't know where the information comes from, where the data comes from, they will find it harder to trust the output. So make sure that it's clear on what data is used to feed to your systems, so that people will trust the outcome of it more. Regulations, I think everybody knows about the huge number of extra regulations we get. There's a lot of regulations also on AI, but this is an organizational thing. Regulations should be, not only for AI, should be clear within the organization. Stuff like GDPR, make sure that you're not throwing names and stuff towards your agents. These things should be a part of your organizational readiness, or will have to be, to make your AI projects work and to not harm your brand. And then monitoring is a very important one. AI is not a set and forget. So an agent, an AI workflow, none of that is set and forget. You really need to treat them like an employee. Got to be fair, it's going to be an employee for which you need not too much people management, and they will not take holidays and stuff like that. But you need to be following up with any AI project that you're doing. You need to have check-ins. It needs to be checked if the output is still right. Make sure that they don't start drifting off and hallucinate. So you have to look at it really as some recurring employee review that you need to do with your AI processes also. And don't let all of this scare you. We mentioned a lot, but we mentioned this because we're looking at a company that is moving towards that stage 3 AI environment, and I'm pretty sure that all of the companies here will at a certain point reach that point. As we said, you start with the beginning, and the whole process is cut up in steps that can easily be done. Also, we, Salesforce, Biztory, we are there to support you in every step of the way. And those steps, this is once again, Matt showed this one at the beginning. He showed them block after block. Obviously, it's a circular movement. So after your monitoring, you will maybe at a certain point notice that something needs some triggering, some fine tuning. Okay, then you start ideating again about what can we do, how can we make this better, and the whole process starts again. Every single step here on this, we have an approach to support you with that, and that approach can be found here. We will also share the slides, so no worries. If you scan this code, you will find the AI Agents Accelerator, in which we, per step, explain you on how we support you through that process. And then here is our information. This is our emails. If you have any questions, please let us know. And I think both Matt and I are looking very much forward to supporting you in your first or your next successful AI agent or project. Thanks a lot for watching.